it together. Your mind can't sleep when you let it serve. Now you wanna see me fall. From a quarter mile, I can see you at the goal. Think about it, ring won't tell you what I saw. When you break it up, you'll see who had it all. You had it all. You said you wanted to fall into oblivion. Forget about the world we're living in. Fall into oblivion, 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 oblivion. Oh, go in. Fall into oblivion.
Hey, what's up? We are here today in a Saturday, and it's an amazing Saturday because we have an amazing session for all of you here today. And we are going to be joined by Mr. Priyadeep Sinha while I invite him onto the stage and share what he has to share with you. I would like to just say that okay, the chat is open, so whatever questions you have to ask him, so whatever suggestions, comments, feedback, whatever you have, just drop it down in the chat and we will take that up during the session and after the session as well. So this is the 5th episode of the Red Carpet series, and this is where we actually pick the brain of awesome people. And today the awesome man is going to be Mr. Priyadeep Sinha, the Vice President of Game India. So before I invite him, let's quickly look at his profile so that we get an idea on who he is. So yes, as I told you, this is the Red Carpet where we pick the brain of awesome people, and we are in the 5th episode, and this is Priyadeep Sinha for you, and this is his profile. So he is the Vice President of Game, and he is a global panel member in MIT Technology Review, advisory council member in Harvard Business Review, and then he was ex-founder at Kiddovators, his startup. And he is a TEDx speaker as well. So you can understand how much we have to learn from him and how much he has to share with all of us, and it's going to be really amazing. So it's not going to be really valuable unless we make it really interactive. So whatever questions you have, drop it down in the chat, and with that, let's invite Mr. Priyadeep Sinha. So here he is. Just a moment. Okay, this is interesting. Crazy times. Just a moment.
Hi Vignesh.
Hi. Sorry, it was a bug. So always we start with the bug, right? So anyways, hi. It's a nice night and nice to talk with you. So it's really a pleasure to have you on stage. So before we start, so for all the people who are watching, so Priyadeep was my senior. We studied in Manipal together. So that's how I got to know him. He shared a quick session, an insightful session about the business plan, and that's how I got to know who he is. So with that, let's start. So Priyadeep, can we actually start with an introduction to who you are? What does Priyadeep stand for?
Sure. Okay, great. Thanks so much, Vignesh. Very glad and happy to be here. I think if I were to give an introduction of myself, I think the most interesting thing about my early life is that I grew up in six different towns and cities of India. So I went to six different schools, got to interact with a lot of different kinds of people as part of those experiences, and then I landed up in Manipal, where I did my engineering. I think a couple of years before you did, and I had always been fascinated by entrepreneurship. It's something that sort of I understood. I felt I understood right from my high school days. And moment we got an opportunity to start a venture as part of the Manipal incubator, we took that opportunity, started out in 2000. So we made the pitch in late 2010, which it wasn't like startup and entrepreneurship was not as mainstream as it is today, right? So it was a very different world. It was so new at that point of time, and I think got a really good kick out of that experience. Ran that company for more than 8 years, and here I am. So yeah, that's a bit of an introduction about me.
Nice. That was a quick introduction about him, but he has a lot more to actually say about himself. But let's not go through his resume. So your journey started as an entrepreneur, as you had actually mentioned. Starting off the battle as an entrepreneur, and now today you are actually again back in the entrepreneurship journey, focusing on mass
Right.
entrepreneurship. So you have actually completed the cycle, and you're back again. So how does that experience look like for you?
I think I'll tell you something. When we got started, when I got started in my journey in 2011, what really worked for me as an entrepreneur was the kind of amazing support I got from the broader ecosystem, right? So we had this amazing pool of mentors and advisors to our company, and given that I was for the longest period of time I have been in Bangalore, and the company ran out of Bangalore. We had this amazing sort of well knit community where somebody senior to you or somebody who knows more about something than you is always willing to share, right? And I think that was a very critical piece, and that helped us get to where we were. I mean, in so just to give an idea to the audience, in about 8 years time, we got to a little more than 140,000 students into our programs across the country, and this covered 22 states, close to 460 odd schools. And it was a large operation, but it wasn't built in a single day, right? We had to go through that journey, and I realized how hard it is for a 21, 22-year-old, trying to start out, trying to grow a successful business. How difficult that journey is for them. And I think that's where my interest in entrepreneurship still remains. That's where I'm always sort of, I somehow, I don't know, I find myself in situations where I'm talking about entrepreneurship, where I'm talking about my journey, where I'm talking to other people about their journeys and understanding where I can help them. And it seems like once you've been part of this world, you can't go out and do something else, right? So I think it just sort of grabs you on, and it's so exciting. I think today, of course, like as compared to 2010 or 11, today there are a much larger number of youngsters doing businesses. I even see 16, 17-year-old people running their startups, which is incredible, right? So I think we just need to sort of up our game here, and ensure that we are able to provide the right kind of support system to these entrepreneurs as well. And I think that's where most of my interest today lies, Vignesh.
Nice. So nice to see a brief about the entire support system in entrepreneurship. Which plays a big impact. So for all others who are watching this session, so can you actually talk about what your startup is all about?
Sure. When I was in high school, I went through this whole experience myself, where I was not able to connect with what was being taught. I did not understand why we were doing what we were doing, and I had this huge friction in school, in when I was in 11th grade and 12th grade, and I realized that if learning is not fun, what is the point of going through that journey, right? I mean, in my head it made no sense, and it's something that stayed with me for a very long time. And when we were writing this business plan, and this company was born out of writing a business plan and not actually as a company, right? And we were writing the business plan. I was very convinced that we have to solve for the fact that learning has to be fun, learning has to be engaging, and learning has to be centered around the learner, right? Most learning that happens in the world today is centered around the educator, centered around the system, centered around what is the outcome that we want them to have, but not truly the learner. The learner has no decision making in the journey of that education happening, right? And I think that was a huge disconnect, and we thought, let's try and solve it. It was very audacious. It was a really challenging task to take on, but I think I would have really regretted if I did not, right? So having said that, we went through this whole journey of understanding where learning needs to go to, what's the shift that needs to happen, and realize there is this whole element of 21st century skills, which is primarily elements like critical thinking, creativity, design thinking, problem solving abilities, greater empathy, which are not part of any curriculum today, right? No curriculum has these as elements which are like directly embedded, and so we built programs around these specific aspects, and these were actually built for students who were in grade 3 and upwards, up to grade 11. And yeah, we saw this amazing transformation happen across year after year in so many children, right? I mean, a lot of the children who excelled in these programs were not the regular school toppers, right? Some of them did not come from that background, and yet they did well here, which gave them the confidence that they are fit for this world. It's just that the system is not fit for them, and it also gave their parents and their educators the confidence that these kids know what they're doing, right? And I think we'll talk about it at a later point in today's conversation. But my TEDx talk was also centered around this, right? Where I said I think the learner needs to be in the control seat for what their learning journey is going to be like, and it doesn't happen today.
True. Talking about this learning journey and how you, try to actually make it amazing. In fact, even I had the same problem of, being a learner and, not feeling the relevance in the education system where I am in. So, but, this challenge still exists. I mean, even today, the challenge still exists. It is not a problem which is still solved. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge in solving a problem like this, where the education system is like this, and the learner is not, what do you say, in sync with the education system, and people are trying to solve this, and still, someone like you had actually made a startup on the same thing, but actually, again, it is turning out to be a challenge, right? So, how do you bring about the shift in the education system which you are actually talking about?
So, very interesting question, Vignesh. And if I were to sort of give myself advice on how to do this right, I think there are a few very fundamental challenges in the system today. The first is parents. Parents are not willing to take that risk with their children. All parents, they will say a lot of things about the school, the system, and all of that. When it comes to their children's education, they will go back to the norm. They will go back to that old way of education, and and then, so once the parent is not willing to sort of come out of that mold, it's not willing to sort of take that transition away from where education is today to a new paradigm, right? Neither the school nor the additional support systems like the edtech platforms that you see today will be able to cater in a different way, right? For example, we tried, and as a startup, I think that 140,000 children looks like a good number, but in a country where we have like tens of crores of learners, that's just a paltry number, right? And I think
Definitely.
my sense is that the onus needs to come from parents first. That's the starting point. And once the parents have owned and are willing to experiment with learning and take it to a different place, all the external system, which is the school, the edtech players. I'll tell you, any company which is succeeding today in the edtech world is not built around innovation. I mean, they're innovating in terms of how they're selling to people, etc., etc. But the curriculum and what they're teaching is not innovative. It is the same drab, regular school curriculum that is being taught. And I think that's where the fundamental problem is. Of course, if you try to be the outlier and you don't have the resources to, keep continuing on that journey, you will face situations like we did. Despite scaling, we were not able to convince enough people that this makes sense. We were not able to get out enough monetary value out of that, and in the end, the company was not able to sustain itself, right? But I think the first step starts with the parents, and then the system, owning this up and trying to make that shift. And it's not easy. I'll tell you, like Finland, which is understood to be the number one sort of education system in the world, started the journey to where they are today 30 years back. It took them 30 years to get to this place, right? They started in the late 80s, and there was a slow step. But what happened is that the policymakers were in sync. The parents understood that something innovative was happening in the ecosystem, and they backed it, and the school system was ready for the change to happen. Um, and I think we're not there yet. It needs a lot more effort, and I really hope that we can get to that place pretty soon.
Yeah, in fact, people were talking about digital transformation, then Corona came. So then digital transformation happened. Maybe something like that will turn up for the education system, hopefully. You know,
Hope so. Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, about the startup which you were talking about the challenges you faced. So what was the major challenge, due to which you were not able to continue with Kiddovators?
Sure. Okay. So I think the challenge started back in 2013 when we launched the current kilometers, the model that we ran for over 6 years. When we launched that in 2013, we our sort of focus was to get customers quickly, right? And in doing so, we priced our product at a fairly low price, because otherwise we would see very little adoption, and that was our challenge at that point of time. And because we started there, because year on year our ability to increase fees was limited, right? In India, like for example, if something is priced at 1,000 rupees a certain year, you can't make it 3,000 the year after that, right? It will be 1,200 or 1,300. Otherwise you will see a large drop in of sort of customers in a program like this, right? So that was our first challenge, right? That was the thing where the challenge started coming in. As we grew further, our cost of research, because we were trying to build in really innovative programs, the cost of distribution, cost of acquisition was really high, because we had to first educate the customer. So we had to educate the school, we had to educate the parent, and then convert them into a customer, right? And so the customer acquisition cost did not come down with time, right? So it was always new acquisition meant we were educating new customers, right? And so what happened is essentially the kind of money we were making from the business was not enough to sustain itself over a long period of time, right? So which meant that we needed to keep on fundraising, and which was getting harder and harder with time, right? So I think I looked at that scenario. I sort of did a 3 year further picture, and realized that this business model itself is not sustainable. The product is sustainable. It could reach operational break even very easily, but the overall the
Model.
organization level model, it wasn't sustainable. And I took a conscious call of shutting this business down, because it wasn't right to keep on burning more investor capital. And I felt that maybe this may not be the right time for a product or a program like this. But what has happened since then is that I see a lot of new companies who are sort of in that zone today, and there are more and more of those coming into that sphere. I am friends with a lot of them. We speak
Nice.
on a regular basis, and I feel that we are getting to a point where the inflection will come in less than 5 years time.
Nice. Actually, this is failing is not bad. You learn from this and then you continue. That's what you have done so far.
Absolutely.
In fact, you have continued this journey and to end up in mass entrepreneurship. So now, what do you actually do in Game India? So what is your role there?
Sure. So my role at Game is to primarily focus on creating entrepreneurial ecosystems. And I'm trying that out in two different geographies. One is in Punjab and one is in Meghalaya, which are very different to each other. Very exciting work, and we're trying to see, what do you need to do, what kind of ingredients do you need to build a sort of a Bangalore startup like ecosystem in any place in the country, right? So I think that's primarily what I work on. Apart from this, I do a couple of other projects around, specifically mentoring for mass entrepreneurs and social security, etc. But my focus, is on building these local ecosystems in these two states, which is a very interesting but also very very challenging role, and which is why I took it up. I think having been an entrepreneur, you come with certain amount of empathy towards any entrepreneur, and I think that's the most useful piece that will help somebody like me understand what the pain of a specific kind of entrepreneur is, and how can we get the right resources to solve them, and it keeps me driven. And also, Vignesh, I promised myself the day I was graduating that I will not let a single day in my life be the one where I wake up and I don't feel like waking up, right? So I want to feel energetic every single day in my life, and it was I had at that experience while I was running my startup. I have the exact same experience today. Every day I wake up with new enthusiasm, new energy, and that sort of willingness to do something new and different at this point of time.
That's really a quality which you need to improve over time and not get let down by whatever has happened. That's really great to hear. In fact, for all the people who are watching, so learn from him, because if you are actually facing failures, that's fine. Face it head on and then get on with it. So, anyways, next, the main question which I want to ask is, you talked about Gen Z in your TED talk.
Right.
Now. Talking about Gen Z, the education system, and the entrepreneur ecosystem which you are talking about, how do you think everything is going to work out for them? Like, is the education system going to be okay for them? Is the entrepreneur ecosystem which you are trying to create fit for them? So how is Gen Z going to be now?
Okay, so I think from my understanding, there are a few qualities of Gen Z that I found out to be most interesting, right? So, contrary to popular belief, the overall empathy in this generation, in Gen Z, is greater than the generations before them, right? And in fact, it has been increasing. Just like intelligence, empathy has also been increasing from generation to generation, and hence Gen Z is more has greater empathy than millennials do, right? Which is fantastic. I mean, it's going to be they are going to look at the world from a perspective of how do we make it equity driven for everybody, right? And that's a phenomenal quality to have. If you remember, the world was a far more challenging. It was more racist, it was more sexist in the past, and we are getting better with that. And I think Gen Z will take it a notch above where it is today. That's the first quality. The second is they have this immense amount of courage, right? It's borderline insanity in terms of courage, but I think that extreme courage to be able to just push the boundaries on things. And I think we saw this with kids on a regular basis. I mean, if really see this, the first set of kids we worked with in 2011 were the earliest bracket of Gen Z, and the ones that we worked towards the later years of Kiddovators and GyanLab, they were the later segment of Gen Z. But across all of them, across the eight odd years, we saw the exact same amount of courage in these kids, right? So that was the second factor. The third factor was that tinge in their eyes. You give them a challenge, and they just take on it, right? They don't like backing down, and I think which is another phenomenal quality that this particular generation have. And the fourth and the most important one is, unlike any previous generation, they're globally connected, right? Right from the childhood, they have been connected to all other like Gen Z's in different geographies of the world. So a kid in the States or in India or in Brazil or in South Africa or in Japan is not very different from one another, right? The ones who have gotten that experience with connectivity and etc., and that whole explosion of information that they have available to them. I think all of this just gets them in a very unique place where they're absolutely poised to make the right kind of changes in the world that is needed, right? In fact, a lot of times I see adults and slightly older adults talking about, oh, these millennials don't know what they're talking about. They don't have the right sort of capabilities and so on and so forth. My argument to them is, if you look at the world leaders today, right? uh, Only this year, towards the end of 2019 and early 2020, we have two global leaders who are millennials. Everybody else is a generation before, right? So they are doing a shit job, and not this generation. And my sense is, as this sort of time moves on, and as the Gen Z takes up as global leaders, they are going to do an even better job than millennials, right? And which is why I deeply believe that we need to create an environment that nurtures their thinking, that sort of is an enabler to them, that acts as a conduit for them to sort of transform themselves into a place where their courage, their abilities, and all of that is honed for making the world a better place. And yeah, and that gives me my belief that the world is going to be in great hands when the Gen Z take over.
Nice, nice to hear. So actually, you have been talking about Gen Z, you have been talking about the millennials, and you have been talking about entrepreneurship here. So different things, all in the same session. But for the people who are actually watching the session, for me, for anyone who is
Right.
actually starting off, so what should be their next step? Like, where do they actually start if they are to become an entrepreneur, or if they were to actually reach their goal in life? What would be the first step in their discovery?
I think One is, being willing to fail and fail fast is important, because not everything that you will try will work, right? And especially as entrepreneurs, since you're trying to push the buck forward, it might get harder to get things right in the first go. And I think you need to be okay with that. That's step number one. Step number two is you need to be realistic with what you're doing. And I think I see a lot of young entrepreneurs sometimes get delusional with the fact that if they start something, the world will conspire to make their startup successful. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way, right? So I think you will have to put in that extreme amount of hard work and passionate hard work into making this happen. And that's second. And third, and the most important point is be true to yourself, right? A lot of times, in our as entrepreneurs, we are always selling to others, right? And I think if you're not selling, you're not actually truly an entrepreneur. And sometimes in that bid to sell, while we'll start doing those little white lies with potential customers, at some point we start lying to ourselves as well, right? We sort of try to pacify ourselves with things going wrong and all of that. I think you need to stay away from that, being very true to yourself, being aware of where you are, where you need to go, what the business needs to have for it to survive. I think all of those are important things to remember. And another important thing that I don't know if this is the right sort of time to talk about it, but so I get a lot of questions from youngsters as to how do I raise money for my startup, right? And my answer is, if you can raise money from your customers, that's the best way, because there are only certain specific conditions in which you will get equity capital. In fact, it is the most expensive form of capital, and it doesn't come by easily, right? For us, it took us the first 6 years of our journey to get our first institutional investor in, right? So it takes that much amount of time, and hence it could take that much amount of time. So I would say that if you're chasing money, you're not doing the right thing. If you're chasing customers, if you're building products that solves their problems or challenges, I think that's the right path to go, is what I would tell them.
Nice. So that's the right attitude again, because you solve a problem and that's how your business grows, and that's how you generate revenue, the cash flow, and your entire capital. As people call as bootstrapping. Now, talking about the current scenario here. So at least before there was investors to look at. There were people were to sell to. But what would you do in the current COVID situation where every startup is getting attacked left and right? Or is that really the case, or is it just the hype around?
So I think it is challenging. I mean, businesses it's brutal out there, right? I mean, the kind of purchasing capacity of the broader economy has reduced, which means that all kinds of businesses will suffer, barring the few essential ones, right? So things like pharma and food and education may sort of do better than other sectors, but this happens all the time, right? So whenever a cycle comes, a recession comes, some businesses struggle and some kind of businesses grow. And I think that's a cycle that will keep happening. And every 10 years, every decade, you will see like something changing, right, in the scenario. But my point is, there's always a way out, right? And I think every situation brings with itself opportunities, and entrepreneurs must be the first set of people who look at those opportunities, right? I mean, we are a country which is entrepreneurial largely, right? I mean, from a country which produces zero PPE kits, we went to producing like almost 5 lakhs kits a day, right? And it's our entrepreneurs who are doing it. We went from like delivering education through physical means to completely digitizing education, right? And there are so many companies who are doing that today. And my sense is that there's opportunity everywhere. There's opportunities for all kind of entrepreneurs. Be smart about it. It's important to optimize your spending. It's not about saving your money. It's not saving cash. It's about optimizing cash spend. It's about targeting things that are really working for you and really letting go of things that don't work for you, taking those hard calls, hard decisions, and making sure that the business is able to survive the crisis. Because once you've been able to go through this period, you are a stronger entrepreneur. Your business is a stronger business, right? And I think that's very, very important to remember. I also feel that a lot of entrepreneurs succumb to challenges in such times. And I think I really feel that this is the time when they should go and ask for help, right? If they don't have their set of mentors and advisors set up, they should look to people who they can speak with and get some help in order to sustain the business in a better way. And yeah, and just make sure that you're able to bide your time and come back stronger, right? I don't think any business at any point of time goes through a phase where it has always been smooth sailing for them, right? In our case, every 6 months we went through a journey where it felt like, oh, this is the end now, that we are not able to continue the business, right? But we figured out, right? And I think that as entrepreneurs, it's one of the most important skills that we need to have, and that perseverance is extremely critical in times like these.
So, like you were talking about being, having the perseverance to continue your journey and all that, right? So, now talking about your own startup, if you were to start it again from scratch, and you had all the fund, you had the entire ecosystem around, who will be the first audience you would target? Where will you actually start?
Okay, that's interesting, Vignesh. So I think I will, if I were doing something what I was doing in the past now, of course I would first, figure out a way of having some steady form of capital coming in, which means that if it requires us to build a services component and selling it to a different kind of audience, could be adults, could be colleges, so on and so forth, I would do it, right? Because that's also a lucrative market that we never looked at because it felt incorrect from a like commitment point of view. I was very committed to working with school children. And once you build a business like this, that's service oriented, that's generating enough cash for the business, divert more of that to product building and ensuring that we are able to, sort of target our focus audience. And while we're doing it, also like take both B2B and B2C route. Now, what we did as in the past as a business is we primarily focused on the B2B element, right? We went to schools and then through schools we went to parents. We would also like to, try the B2C component today because it seems like today it's a world where parents are willing to, try those additional things for the kids directly without the school being involved, and they might actually trust your program more if the school is not involved, right? That's also a possibility. And we'll build for the world and not just for India because I think that sort of it's very similar where everybody is, right? Most countries don't have programs that we were designing anyways. In fact, by the end of the of our journey, we already had a couple of customers from different parts of the world, and it looked like we also have opportunities there. So I think those are all the things that I would have done differently. I would do differently if I would run this business again. And to be very frank with you, I think I'm just an entrepreneur in sabbatical right now. I would say, yeah,
That's the right way to put it. So you never lose the spirit of entrepreneurship. It's always in you once you start it. So
right.
we have a question from the audience as well. So I am a class 12 commerce student, and what is the first step I should take in order to pursue entrepreneurship? Because CA is also a very good course to follow.
Interesting. So I think it's okay if you try both out because in class 12, it's good to keep that, sort of energy high, try different things, and there's no harm in doing that, right? And once you reach a phase where you need to take a call, I think you will be better informed yourself whether the entrepreneurship gig will work out better for you or a CA or becoming a CA will work out better for you. Because remember, at the end of the day, most CAs are also business folks, right? They're also running businesses, and they're not technically like employees of any place. So I think that is also another way of getting into entrepreneurship. So I would say try it out. Class 12 is a great time to start thinking about multiple things that you would like to do in life. So that's my advice to you.
So, attaching to the same question here. So, what do you think about dropping out? I mean, is it the right thing to do for starting up a business?
Uh, Truly speaking, Vignesh, if you can avoid dropping out, avoid, right? Because see, I feel that now you should not drop out because it's cool, right? I understand sometimes that some people are unable to cope up with the curriculum. They're unable to understand why are they studying this, and in those cases, I do understand, right? But I seriously feel that, and in fact, I did post about it today that no matter where you are, what kind of student you are, you need to put in your best in education too. Remember that why IITians or folks who graduate from IIM get some kind of early funding is because they have proven that they are capable of doing things in life, right? And I think if you can take on those journeys, do take it, right? If you can't score a 90%, don't go out like dropping from education. So my sense is that you shouldn't do things because they are cool. I understand that sometimes you might be challenged and it's okay to then drop out. But in most other cases, try to get because the world will judge you on everything that you've done, right? The world will always judge you on everything that you've done in your life during your entrepreneurial journey as well as before and after. And it's important to keep that in mind and ensure that. So my advice is, definitely, if you can avoid dropping out, please don't drop out.
Nice. Thank you for your insightful advice here, because we see, as you rightly said, we see that term coming up always. So in fact, I see it in a lot of YouTube advice as well. So don't go to school or college. So that's not good for you. Anyways, so thank you for being there in the session today. So I don't want to keep you long. We are already over time. So otherwise, I would actually continue keep talking to you. But it's 9:35, and I would like to let you go, and I will actually share the rest of the audience questions to you offline, so that you can answer them when you have the time. So thank you again, and thanks everyone for joining today. And one important thing I would like to share with you is, if he is able to start off with entrepreneurship, get run a startup, fail in it, and then again come back to being a successful entrepreneur at heart. So that is really important thing to take. So if you fail, fine, just face it, and then move on. So that's something which I at least learned from him today. So, and I hope we take it all back to us. So with that, let's see you all in the next session, which is going to be, and in the next red carpet series, we are going to meet Mr. Karthik Mandabil. He's also from Manipal. So there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there in Manipal. So in fact, he is also a serial entrepreneur. So we will talk to him as well. So stick out for the next Saturday, and we have something interesting with you to share. And until then, bye bye. See you. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks again. Good night. Bye.
Bye.